So I'm about half an hour into this, about a fifth of the way through. Fuck me, this is going to be a long movie. I just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on the opening. The opening was garbage. The opening was filth. The opening was terrible. The opening had Mari in it. I mean, so like those of you who haven't seen this movie, the opening takes place in Paris, and Paris is covered in LCL for some reason, and like some of the bridge bunnies from Nerve are like hacking this thing that's going to remove the LCL that's coating Paris, and they have this like super weapon that's a bunch of World War II Japanese battleships that are like hooked onto this thing with giant magnets, and they're using it as like a shield or something. And for some reason, Unit 8, which is piloted by Mari, has like wires because they wanted to do like wire fu, kung fu matrix stunts with Avas. And then there's like these Avas, these angels that have developed into like these localized life forms. And there's like this mass produced Avas that are like, have, are incorporated into like siege cannons. It's just, it was really bad. It was just retarded. Like, it's not fun. It's not interesting. But I kind of wish we'd go back to that because this is even worse. So they go to this fucking village, and we meet with characters that I guess we cared about previously. So now we have Kensuke and Toji and Hikari. Hikari looks really horrible. The 14 years have not done her any favors, nor have they done Toji any favors. I mean, they shouldn't, like, they aren't even 30 at this point, and they look like they're in their 40s. I guess it's just because of aging from the stress. We get this, like, really shitty, like, low tier slice of life stuff, like Ray not knowing what a cat is or a dog is, or this comedic thing where she's working in the rice paddies, and, like, nothing about it makes any kind of sense. And I think it's implied that Kensuke and Asuka are in a relationship now, and it's kind of creepy because, see, like, you really do understand how young they are when you see her in kind of a semi-romantic fashion with a guy in his late 20s. I don't know if that's supposed to be like some kind of slight against the fan base or what it is. Maybe that's like an actual good piece of self-reflexivity, is reminding everybody that they're not actually 14 anymore and they're not watching this show as a teenager, and that, yeah, it is a little bit weird to be idolizing women that young. Maybe that's what it was going for. Or maybe it's just bad writing and they were trying to have a quick gag. So I'll give it that much. If that was the intention of having Kensuke being the otaku who grows up and gets together with the waifu, but the waifu is really kind of creepy because she's still only 14, but he's an adult male. So, I mean, if that's the case, then that's actually not bad. That's actually kind of an interesting self reflexive standpoint. Do I think that's the case? No. No, I don't. I think it's just they just wanted to cuck Shinji and to come up with some reason for Mari even being in this movie series. So, yeah, let's get back to this. So, I'm about an hour into this movie now, and I'm really getting Rise of Skywalker vibes from it. That is that they kind of realized the previous movie sucked and that they had dug themselves into a corner. So they're more or less just ignoring everything that happened in the previous movie and trying to tell a completely separate story. This feels very much like Q didn't happen. They're barely even referencing events that happened in it. If anything, they're kind of referencing stuff that happened in 2 more than in 3. So I feel like they just realized they fucked up and that there was nowhere that they could go from there. So they were just gonna kind of take a mulligan and start from scratch. So to be perfectly honest, if this had have been the sequel to 2.0, this wouldn't have been that bad. Most of the problems with the rebuilds came about because of the bizarre design decisions they made in 3. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of any of them, but like where it went from just being not my thing to something I think that actively sucked was in 3. And I feel like if this had have just been the sequel and they could have just made some pretty minor edits or script changes so that this could be the third and final part. I think the series is only supposed to be, was it only supposed to be 3, I think, to begin with? I'm not really sure, but I'll say it now. I don't think this is as bad as 3. Um, if nothing else, I'll give them a little bit of credit for doing something a little different. For not just because the first one was just phoned in. The second one was just kind of cringy. The third one was awful. They're at least like get a gold star for effort. Like the village scenes are bad, but they're not horrible bad. It's at least them trying to do something creative. I'll take these like lame village scenes over the shitty mass produced bad CGI action scenes any day. So well, I'm not saying this is good. This is at least like watchable. And that's probably the most you're going to get out of me as far as this film goes. So I'm about an hour and a half into the movie now. And I'm going to be honest, the last half hour actually wasn't bad. Like I said before, I think if this had have been part 3, if it had have gone part 1, part 2, and then this was the end and you did some rewrites to fill in the gaps, it might have made sense. In this one, they at least acknowledge stuff that happened in 2. I feel like they acknowledge more stuff that happened in 1 and 2 in this movie than they do in 3. So maybe if 3 is just like a troll and it's not canon anymore. I mean, I wouldn't call this good, but it's at least something different. But it's different in an interesting way. If it can be said that End to Evangelion was giving the fan base everything they wanted, but in the worst way possible, because Ano was suicidally depressed and he didn't like the fact that people were complaining about how this series ended on TV. This is kind of the opposite. This is Ano trying to give the fan base everything they wanted, but in like a nice way. And it's kind of. So, my issue with 2 and 3 is that it got away from the concept that the Evas are these biomechanical monsters that are taking all of humanity's resources to build. They're extremely difficult to build, they're extremely difficult to maintain. And suddenly they can just produce them. Suddenly there's just tons of them. Everyone and his dog has an Eva and all that kind of stuff. But in this film, it's like so over the top that it actually kind of makes a little more sense. Because most of the units you come across are these really poorly built, mass produced ones. I don't even think they can generate AT fields. But they're more akin to something like a mobile doll in Gundam Wing than they are to a Gundam itself. Maybe that's a good equivalent to it. Like, think about Gundam Wing or any Gundam show. The Gundams normally take an inordinate amount of resources to build. Now, imagine they're suddenly able just to build like dozens of them out of nowhere. That would be a massive game changer. But what you have in this is something I guess more like what happened in Endless Waltz, where you have, I forget what they're called, serpents, but the mass-produced heavy arms clones. So it's not so bad when those things get mass-produced and they get destroyed. So I guess what I'm saying is they kind of fixed that issue by making them so mass produced, also just making this thing so over the top it's divorced from any kind of realism or pretense that we're going for the same kind of feel as the original, which is better than kind of the ambiguous thing. So far I would actually say this might be better than 2. This might actually wind up being the best one of the rebuild, which isn't really saying anything because I didn't really care for them. I mean, I liked them at the time because it was really cool to see Ava on the big screen when it was something I grew up with, but we'll see. We'll keep going. So we're heading into the final half hour of this movie, and we have Giant Ray showing up again. So I mean, good a point as any. Last half hour has actually been pretty good. They've kind of just decided to play to the strength and do what made End to Evangelion the movie it was. We aren't trying to explain shit. We aren't like nothing makes any fucking sense. We're just gonna go full balls to the wall with random mythological references, Gendo making cool speeches about shit, and surrealist imagery. And you know what? I can kind of dig that. That's at least something resembling the show that this movie is supposed to be based off of. It is kind of nice to see Shinji finally fight with his father, and it is. I kind of like, in spite of myself, the whole them fighting each other throughout alternate universes throughout the show and everything kind of bringing itself together. I mean, once again, see, the thing is, I'm not trying to not like the movie at this point. I just. It's just retarded. But at least this is kind of like fun retardation. At least this is kind of satisfying retardation instead of fucking Q. So I'll give it that much. Let's see how this bad boy ends. Thank God it's finally over. Goodbye, all Evangelions. Oh, I'm just glad that it's finished. This whole thing took. I don't even remember when the first rebuild came out, but it's just been going on and on and on and on forever. I didn't even think this movie was ever even going to be released, let alone released in English, let alone released in a format that I can legally watch it in English. But it was. And I got through it and now it's over with. It's it's like Game of Thrones. It's like a lot of these things. It's done. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to wonder what could have been. It got finished. So how was it? How was Thrice Upon a Time? Well, it's I don't even know how to even fucking describe what this movie was. I mean, was it good? Was it bad? It was an Evangelion movie. I'll just say that. It actually was. Um, I guess you can like it or you can hate it. It just kind of is what it is. They took a lot of aspects of the original series and into Ava, like the family drama, the dealing with living in a world full of sin, um, stuff like that, resetting the world. I mean, there was some genuine good stuff in here. The Gendo part near the end where he tells his backstory was actually really good. Nothing relating to Mari was resolved. I maintain she was put in there solely as fan service, and that whole thing with her like not aging since I don't fucking know what that was about. Also, couldn't they at least get like a British English voice actress to play her? Like I get that they most of the actors just use their natural voices. Although Tiffany Grant can speak German, and the people who I know who speak German tell me she does a pretty good job of it. But it's just like they could have done something with Mari. Why does she end up with Shinji? I guess because in the rebuild, Asuka and Shinji don't really have any screen time together either. So it's like you can have like one of two characters Shinji has no screen time with, or you can have Rei, and I don't even really know like what Rei is supposed to be in this. Also, are there Asuka clones now? Like when I watched the original series when I was like 13, I spent hours and hours and hours looking up all the esoteric lore, figuring things out, figuring out character motivations. I really don't have any desire to do that with this movie. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch it again someday. I rather doubt it. But I mean, it was a decent ride. The whole thing was just kind of fan service, but like I can kind of dig that. It's not the same continuity. It's not the same characters. It's people who resemble the original characters, but it's not like with Star Wars where they just wiped out the initial original continuity and made a completely new one. They just decided to do a side project. And I mean that's always kind of been a part of it. It's been a pick your own canon thing. If you didn't like the original ending, you can say Into Ava's the ending. If you don't like Into Ava, you can say the original one is. I guess you could say that yeah, so I don't know. I wonder if Gainax will do something else with the franchise. Maybe they will. I mean, I suppose they could as long as they have it, but you know what? It didn't make a lot of sense. It was lame as fuck. Like it even by the standards of Ava, it made no fucking sense. I think it was largely phoned in, but ending it, I feel like it's ending on a high note. I don't feel angry. I don't feel I wasted my time. I don't feel upset or anything like that. So you know what? Not bad. Not bad. I could go through it for hours, picking apart every little shitty thing that sucked about it. But ultimately, it didn't feel like Anno was shitting on his fans this time. It kind of felt to a certain extent like he didn't really care about the artistic integrity of his own work. But he's at least like, I don't know, I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. We'll just give a Hollywood happy ending. We'll give everybody what they want. We'll have Shinji and Asuka say they like each other. We'll have Rei be cute. We'll have Shinji finally confront Gendo. We'll get Gendo's backstory. Gendo gets to be with Yui again. Misato gets to kick ass. We have some trippy, surreal shit at the South Pole. We're going to make just a ton of references to everything else. At least it came, I think, from a good place. It's nice to see the whole cast back together again, probably for the last time, since Netflix are I can't say that word on YouTube, but Netflix are a bunch of F slurs, and they didn't bring back the original cast to do the re-recording for their shitty re-release, which I didn't watch, nor will I watch. But you know what? It is what it is. It is what it is. I'm going to end off with a quote from a great Greek philosopher. It is what it is. Nothing I can do, but I digress. And the earth is flat. Patriots are in control. Trust the plan.